The bustling office of Victor's real estate empire was alive with the usual Friday afternoon chaos. Phones rang incessantly, printers hummed, and the clacking of keyboards filled the air. But amid this typical corporate cacophony, a touching scene was unfolding in the corner office. Stella Martinez, the company's hard-working cleaning lady, stood awkwardly before her boss's imposing mahogany desk. At 36, Stella's face bore the marks of a hard life, but her eyes still sparkled with an indomitable spirit. "Mr. Hawthorne," Stella began, her voice soft but steady, "I just wanted to say goodbye before I leave for my vacation." Victor Hawthorne, a distinguished man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and a charming smile, looked up from his computer. His face softened as he regarded Stella. "Ah, Stella, I almost forgot you're leaving us for 2 weeks. How time flies." Victor leaned back in his leather chair. "You know, I was just thinking the other day how valuable you are to this company." Stella blushed, unused to such praise. "Oh, Mr. Hawthorne, I'm just the cleaning lady. I'm sure you'll manage without me." Victor chuckled, shaking his head. Now, Stella, don't sell yourself short. You bring more to this office than just cleanliness. You bring a warmth, a personal touch that makes this place feel like home." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "I know you're planning to take your son to your grandfather's old place in Pine Grove. I want you to have this." He handed her the envelope. "It's a little bonus to help with your travel expenses." Stella's eyes widened as she peeked inside the envelope. "Mr. Hawthorne, this is too much. I can't accept." "Nonsense," Victor interrupted with a wave of his hand. "You've earned it, Stella. I insist." Just then, the office door burst open, and inbounded Zoe Hawthorne, Victor's 16-year-old daughter. Her long blonde hair swung wildly as she rushed in, her backpack slung haphazardly over one shoulder. "Dad, you won't believe what happened at school today," Zoe began, then noticed Stella. Her face lit up. "Oh, hi, Stella. Are you leaving for your vacation?" Stella nodded, smiling at the teenager's boundless energy. "Yes, Zoe, I'm about to head out." Zoe surprised Stella with a quick hug. "Have a great time, and say hi to Lucas for me." As Stella left the office, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. Little did she know that this vacation was about to change her life forever. The small apartment Stella shared with her son, Lucas, was a testament to her resourcefulness. Every inch of space was utilized. Every piece of furniture served multiple purposes. It wasn't much, but it was home. As Stella packed their bags for the trip, her mind wandered to the past. She remembered the day she'd married Jack, young and full of dreams. She recalled the joy of Lucas's birth, and then the horror of the accident that changed everything. Lucas had been just 5 when he fell from the jungle gym at the park. The doctor said he might never walk again. Jack couldn't handle it. He left them both, disappearing into the night without so much as a goodbye. Stella's eyes misted as she folded Lucas's clothes. She'd fought so hard to find a job that would accommodate her need to care for Lucas. Victor Hawthorne had been a godsend, allowing her to work flexible hours and even bring Lucas to the office on occasion. "Mom?" Lucas's voice broke into her reverie. "Are you okay?" Stella turned to see her son wheeling himself into the room. At 15, Lucas was the spitting image of his father, with the same unruly brown hair and piercing blue eyes, but where Jack's eyes had always held a hint of restlessness, Lucas's shone with kindness and determination. "I'm fine, sweetheart," Stella assured him, wiping away a stray tear. "Just thinking about how excited I am for our trip." Lucas grinned. "Me too. Do you think we'll be able to plant a garden at Great-Grandpa's house?" Stella laughed, ruffling his hair. "I don't see why not. It's the start of summer after all. Maybe we can even grow some vegetables." As they continued packing, Stella felt a surge of hope. This vacation was exactly what they needed, a chance to breathe, to heal, to dream of a better future. The taxi pulled up outside their apartment building, just as the sun was beginning to peek over the horizon. Stella couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement in her stomach. It had been years since they'd taken a real vacation. As the driver loaded their luggage into the trunk, Stella helped Lucas into the back seat. She couldn't help but notice the tightness in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted nervously. "You okay, honey?" she asked, buckling him in. Lucas nodded, but his smile was strained. "Yeah, it's been a while since we've gone anywhere, you know." Stella squeezed his hand. "I know, but this is going to be great. You'll see. As they drove through the awakening city, Stella and Lucas chatted about their plans for the next 2 weeks. Lucas's eyes lit up as they discussed the possibility of planting a garden. "Do you think we could grow tomatoes?" he asked eagerly. "And maybe some cucumbers?" Stella laughed. "We can try. I'm not much of a gardener, but I'm willing to learn if you are." As the city gave way to suburbs and then to rolling countryside, Lucas's nervousness seemed to melt away. He pressed his face against the window, drinking in the sight of endless fields and forests. "Mom, look!" he exclaimed, pointing at a group of deer grazing in a meadow. "I've never seen real deer before." Stella felt her heart swell with joy. This was already worth it, just to see that look of wonder on her son's face. As they neared Pine Grove, Stella found herself lost in memories. She remembered summers spent here as a child, running through the fields with her cousins, helping her grandfather tend to his garden. She hoped Lucas would find the same joy in this place that she once had. The taxi turned onto a narrow dirt road, and Stella knew they were close. As they rounded a bend, the old half-house came into view. It was smaller than Stella remembered, and definitely in need of some TLC, but it was theirs. As the taxi came to a stop, Stella took a deep breath. "Well, Lucas," she said, squeezing her son's hand. "We're here, ready for an adventure?" Lucas grinned back at her, his earlier nervousness forgotten. "Ready, Mom? Let's do this." As Stella helped Lucas out of the taxi, she couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia washing over her. The old half-house stood before them, its weathered wooden siding telling stories of decades gone by. The overgrown garden and creaking porch swing were exactly as she remembered from her childhood visits. "Wow, Mom," Lucas breathed, taking in the sight. "This place is rustic." Stella laughed, ruffling his hair. "That's one way to put it. Your great-grandpa always said this house had character." As they made their way up the uneven path to the porch, Stella began to explain the house's unique history to Lucas. "You see, honey, this used to be one big house, but years ago, your great-grandparents had a falling out. They were so stubborn that they actually split the house in two." Lucas's eyes widened. "No way. People can do that?" "Well, they shouldn't," Stella chuckled. "But these two found a way. Your great-grandpa got this half, and his brother got the other. It's been in our family ever since." Just as Stella was fumbling with the old key in the rusty lock, a cheerful voice called out from behind them. "Hi there. You must be the new neighbors." Stella turned to see a teenage girl bounding up the path, her long, dark hair streaming behind her. The girl's bright smile and energetic demeanor immediately reminded Stella of Zoe Hawthorne. "Well, not exactly new," Stella replied, returning the smile. "I'm Stella Martinez, and this is my son Lucas. My grandfather used to own this house." The girl's eyes lit up. "Oh, that's so cool." "I'm Harper. My mom and I live next door. Well, in the other half of the house, I guess you could say." As Harper chatted animatedly with Lucas, Stella couldn't shake the feeling that there was something familiar about the girl. It wasn't just her resemblance to Zoe. There was something in her features, in the way she moved, that tugged at Stella's memory. Before she could ponder it further, another figure appeared at the gate. A woman in her mid-30s, with the same dark hair as Harper, was watching them with a mix of curiosity and wariness. "Harper," the woman called, her voice carrying a note of exasperation. "What have I told you about bothering the neighbors?" Harper rolled her eyes, good-naturedly. "Mom, I'm not bothering them. I'm being friendly." The woman approached, offering Stella an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry if my daughter's enthusiasm overwhelmed you. I'm Naomi Parker." As Stella shook Naomi's hand, she was struck by a sudden sense of déjà vu. "I'm Stella Martinez. This might sound odd, but have we met before?" Naomi's brow furrowed as she studied Stella's face. "You know, I was just thinking the same thing. Did you ever spend time in Pine Grove as a kid?" Stella nodded eagerly. "Yes, my grandfather owned this house. I used to visit every summer." A look of recognition dawned on Naomi's face. "Wait a minute. Little Stella? The girl who always had her nose in a book?" Stella laughed, memories flooding back. "And you must be Naomi, the wild child who was always trying to get me to climb trees." As the two women embraced, laughing at the unexpected reunion, Lucas and Harper exchanged bemused glances. "Well," Harper said with a grin, "I guess we're all going to be great friends." Little did any of them know just how prophetic those words would turn out to be. The next 2 weeks flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Stella and Lucas, with plenty of help from Harper and occasional assistance from Naomi, set about making the old half-house livable again. They scrubbed floors, dusted cobwebs, and aired out musty rooms. Harper, full of boundless energy, took it upon herself to be Lucas's personal tour guide, showing him all the hidden nooks and crannies of the property. One evening, as Stella and Naomi sat on the porch, watching Harper push Lucas around the overgrown garden in his wheelchair, Naomi turned to her old friend with a wistful smile. "You know, Stella, I never thought I'd see you here again. Life has a funny way of bringing people back together, doesn't it?" Stella nodded, sipping her iced tea. "It sure does. I have to admit, when I inherited this place, I wasn't sure what to do with it. But now, I'm starting to think it might be exactly what Lucas and I needed." Naomi's eyes darkened slightly. "Life hasn't been easy for you, has it?" Stella shook her head, her gaze fixed on Lucas. "No, it hasn't, but we've managed. Lucas is the strongest person I know." There was a moment of comfortable silence before Naomi spoke again, her voice hesitant. "Stella, there's something I've been wanting to tell you. About Harper's father." But before she could continue, Harper's excited voice cut through the air. "Mom! Stella! Come quick, we found something in the garden." The two women hurried over to where Harper and Lucas were gathered around a small, dirt-encrusted object. "Look," Lucas said, his eyes shining with excitement. "I think it's some kind of locket." Stella carefully cleaned the object with the hem of her shirt. As the dirt fell away, a small heart-shaped locket was revealed. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of two smiling teenagers, unmistakably younger versions of herself and Naomi. "Oh my God," Naomi breathed. "I remember this. We buried a time capsule here the summer before I left for college. I can't believe it's still here." As they continued to dig, unearthing more treasures from their shared past, Stella couldn't help but feel that they were on the verge of uncovering much more than just childhood mementos. The days passed, and Lucas began to flourish in the country air. His cheeks took on a healthy glow, and Stella noticed him attempting to push himself further in his wheelchair, determined to explore every inch of the property. One afternoon, as Harper regaled Lucas with stories of her school adventures, Stella overheard a snippet of their conversation that made her heart skip a beat. "You know," Harper was saying, "my mom never talks about my dad, but sometimes when she thinks I'm not looking, she gets this sad, faraway look in her eyes. I think she must have really loved him." Stella's mind raced. Could it be possible? The timing would be right, and Harper's resemblance to Zoe was undeniable? But surely Naomi would have said something. As the end of their vacation approached, Stella found herself faced with a difficult decision. The thought of going back to the city, back to their cramped apartment, and the constant struggle felt unbearable. Here in Pine Grove, Lucas was thriving, and if she was honest with herself, so was she. That night, after Lucas had gone to bed, Stella sat at the kitchen table, poring over her finances. It would be tight, but with the bonus from Victor and some careful budgeting, they might just be able to make it work. Her decision made, Stella felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Tomorrow, she would tell Lucas that they were staying, and then she would have to face Victor and explain why his most reliable cleaning lady wouldn't be returning to the city. Little did Stella know that her conversation with Victor would set in motion a chain of events that would change all their lives forever. Stella's return to the office was met with surprised looks and warm greetings. She made her way to Victor's office, her heart pounding with nervous energy. As she knocked on the door, she took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "Come in," Victor's voice called from inside. Stella entered, finding Victor bent over some paperwork. He looked up, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Stella, welcome back. How was your vacation?" "It was wonderful, Mr. Hawthorne," Stella began, settling into the chair across from him. "In fact, that's what I wanted to talk to you about." Victor leaned back, his expression curious. "Oh? Is everything all right?" Stella nodded, then reached into her bag. "Before I explain, I wanted to show you something." She pulled out her phone and pulled up a photo of Lucas and Harper, their faces alight with laughter as they posed in front of the old house. As Victor looked at the photo, his face went pale. He stared at the image, then back at Stella, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Stella," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who is that girl with Lucas?" Stella took a deep breath. "That's Harper. She's my neighbor's daughter in Pine Grove. Mr. Hawthorne? Victor?" I couldn't help but notice how much she looks like Zoe. Victor slumped back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. This is impossible." "Stella, you said your neighbor? What's her name?" "Naomi," Stella replied softly. "Naomi Parker." Victor's face crumpled, a mix of emotions playing across his features. "Naomi," he repeated, his voice thick with memory. "I knew her, Stella, many years ago before I married Zoe's mother. We had a summer romance, I suppose you'd call it." Stella nodded slowly, the pieces falling into place. "And you never knew." Victor shook his head, his eyes distant. "I was young, ambitious. I had a fiancé waiting for me back in the city. When the summer ended, I left without saying goodbye. It was cowardly, I know that now." He looked at Stella, his eyes pleading. "Stella, I need to go to Pine Grove. I need to see Naomi, to see if Harper is your daughter," Stella finished for him. Victor nodded, his face a mixture of hope and fear. "Will you come with me, please? I don't think I can face this alone." Stella hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. But there's something else I need to tell you. I've decided to stay in Pine Grove. Lucas is doing so well there. And Victor held up a hand, a small smile on his face despite his obvious turmoil. "Say no more, Stella, I understand. And please call me Victor. I think we're well past formalities at this point." As they made plans for the trip to Pine Grove, neither of them noticed Zoe standing just outside the office door, her eyes wide with shock at what she'd overheard. The drive to Pine Grove was tense, filled with Victor's nervous energy and Zoe's sullen silence. Stella sat in the back, feeling like a referee in a match she didn't quite understand. As they pulled up to the old half-house, Stella saw Naomi and Harper in the garden. The moment Naomi spotted Victor stepping out of the car, she froze, her face draining of color. "Victor?" Naomi's voice was barely audible, a mix of disbelief and long-buried pain. Victor approached slowly, his hands slightly raised as if approaching a spooked animal. "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I know it's been years, but I need to talk to you." Harper looked between her mother and this stranger, confusion etched on her face. "Mom, what's going on?" Before Naomi could respond, Zoe burst out of the car, her face flushed with anger. "Dad, is it true? Do I have a sister?" The yard erupted into chaos. Harper's eyes widened in shock, darting between Zoe and Victor. Naomi seemed to shrink into herself, while Victor looked utterly lost. It was Stella who finally took control of the situation. "All right, everyone inside, now. We need to talk this through calmly." As they all filed into the house, Lucas wheeled himself onto the porch, watching the unfolding drama with wide eyes. Inside, the tension was palpable. Victor cleared his throat, looking directly at Naomi. "Naomi, I know I have no right to ask this, but is Harper my daughter?" Naomi closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. When she opened them again, she nodded slowly. "Yes, Victor, she is." The room exploded again. Zoe let out a strangled cry, while Harper gasped. "What?" Victor sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "Why didn't you tell me, Naomi? All these years." Naomi's eyes flashed with anger. "Tell you? You left without a word, Victor. You disappeared. By the time I found out I was pregnant, you were engaged to someone else. What was I supposed to do?" As the adults argued, Harper and Zoe found themselves staring at each other, seeing their own features mirrored in the other's face. "I always wanted a sister," Zoe said softly, her earlier anger melting into wonder. Harper nodded, a small smile forming. "Me too." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Victor's raised voice. "I want to make this right, Naomi. I want to be part of Harper's life. Part of your life, if you'll let me." Naomi shook her head, tears flowing freely now. "It's not that simple, Victor. You can't just waltz back in after 16 years and expect everything to be okay." As the argument continued, Stella slipped outside to check on Lucas. She found him deep in conversation with Dr. Alan Greenwood, the town's well-respected physician who had recently bought a vacation home nearby. "Stella." Dr. Greenwood greeted her with a warm smile. "Lucas here was just telling me about his condition. I hope you don't mind, but I'd love to take a look at his case. I've had some success with similar injuries in the past." Stella's heart leapt with hope, even as she heard the raised voices from inside. "That would be wonderful, Dr. Greenwood. Thank you." As she turned back to the house, steeling herself to re-enter the fray, Stella couldn't help but feel that despite the current chaos, something beautiful was being born. Families were messy, complicated things, but they were also capable of immense love and forgiveness. With a deep breath, she stepped back inside, ready to help this newly discovered family navigate the stormy waters ahead. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Victor extended his stay in Pine Grove, renting a small cottage nearby. He was determined to make up for lost time with Harper, while also trying to repair his relationship with Zoe, who was struggling to come to terms with the existence of her half-sister. Naomi, for her part, was cautiously allowing Victor back into her life. Years of hurt and resentment didn't disappear overnight, but as she watched Harper and Victor bond, she felt her heart softening. One sunny afternoon, as Stella watched the newly formed family attempt a picnic in the garden, she felt a presence beside her. It was Dr. Greenwood. "They're making progress," he observed, nodding towards the group. Stella smiled. "Slowly but surely. It's not easy, but they're trying." Dr. Greenwood turned to her, his eyes twinkling. "Speaking of progress, I wanted to talk to you about Lucas. I've been reviewing his case, and I think there's a real possibility we could get him walking again." Stella's heart skipped a beat. "Really? But how?" "We've seen so many doctors. I've been working on a new treatment," Dr. Greenwood explained. "It combines physical therapy with cutting-edge neural stimulation. It's still experimental, but the results have been promising." As Dr. Greenwood outlined the treatment plan, Stella felt a surge of hope she hadn't experienced in years. When he finished, she impulsively hugged him, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Dr. Greenwood. You have no idea what this means to us." The doctor smiled warmly, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "Please call me Alan, and it's my pleasure, Stella. Lucas is a remarkable young man. He deserves every chance at a full life." As summer turned to fall, life in Pine Grove settled into a new rhythm. Victor split his time between the city and the country, working hard to balance his responsibilities to his company with his desire to be present for both his daughters. Zoe and Harper, after some initial awkwardness, discovered they had more in common than just their father. They became inseparable, with Zoe extending her stay in Pine Grove and even enrolling in the local high school for a semester. Lucas threw himself into his treatment with determination, pushing himself harder than ever before. Stella watched with pride and amazement as her son took his first tentative steps with the help of a walker. And through it all, Stella found herself drawn more and more to Alan Greenwood. His kindness, intelligence, and gentle humor were a balm to her long-wounded heart. One crisp October evening, as they walked together after one of Lucas's therapy sessions, Alan turned to Stella, his eyes serious. "Stella, I hope you know how much you and Lucas mean to me. These past few months have been the happiest of my life." Stella's heart raced as Alan took her hand. "I feel the same way, Alan. I never thought I'd happiness like this again." As their lips met in a tender kiss, Stella felt as if her life had come full circle. The broken half-house that had once symbolized family division now stood as a testament to healing and new beginnings. The following spring brought with it a sense of renewal and hope. The old half-house, once a symbol of family strife, had been fully renovated and now stood proudly as a single unified home. Victor and Naomi, after months of cautious reconciliation, had decided to give their relationship another chance. On a beautiful May afternoon, the extended family gathered in the blooming garden for a double celebration: Victor and Naomi's wedding and Lucas's first steps without assistance. Stella stood arm in arm with Alan, watching with tears in her eyes as Lucas slowly but steadily walked down the makeshift aisle, scattering flower petals for the bride and groom. Harper and Zoe followed arm in arm, their earlier rivalry replaced by a deep, sisterly bond. As Victor and Naomi exchanged vows, Stella couldn't help but marvel at the twists and turns that had brought them all to this moment. What had started as a simple vacation had turned into a journey of discovery, healing, and love. The reception was a joyous affair, filled with laughter, music, and the warm glow of newfound family connections. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the gathering, Alan clinked his glass for attention. "If I could have everyone's attention for a moment," he began, his voice carrying across the garden. I have something I'd like to say. All eyes turned to him as he took Stella's hand, leading her to the center of the gathering. Stella, he said, his voice full of emotion. When you came to Pine Grove, you thought you were just coming for a vacation, but you brought with you a spirit of love and healing that has touched all of our lives. You've shown us the true meaning of family, of forgiveness, and of never giving up hope. He dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Stella gasped, her free hand flying to her mouth. Stella Martinez, Alan continued, opening the box to reveal a sparkling ring. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife and allowing me to be a father to Lucas? For a moment, Stella couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotion. Then, with tears streaming down her face, she nodded vigorously. Yes, yes, of course. The garden erupted in cheers as Alan slipped the ring onto Stella's finger and pulled her into a passionate kiss. Lucas wheeled over to them, his face beaming with joy. Does this mean I can call you Dad now? He asked Alan, his eyes shining. Alan knelt down, pulling Lucas into a warm embrace. I would be honored, son. As the celebration continued late into the night, Stella found herself sitting on the porch swing, taking in the scene before her. Victor and Naomi danced slowly on the makeshift dance floor, their faces glowing with happiness. Zoe and Harper were engrossed in conversation with a group of local teens, laughing and gesticulating wildly. And Lucas, her brave, resilient Lucas, was attempting to Alan some sort of complicated handshake, both of them dissolving into laughter at each failed attempt. Naomi broke away from the dance floor and joined Stella on the swing. Can you believe how much has changed in a year? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. Stella shook her head, smiling. If someone had told me last summer that this is where we'd end up, I would have thought they were crazy. Naomi squeezed her hand. Thank you, Stella. If you hadn't come back to Pine Grove, none of this would have happened. You brought our family back together. As they sat there watching the joyful scene before them, Stella felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The broken half-house had become whole again, just like the families it now sheltered. And as she looked towards the future, Stella knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as one big, beautifully blended family.